I'll start with my immediate right. On my right, I have Mr. Mbugwa Nganga, who's the managing editor of The People Daily. Next to him is Delones Bruno, a Gen Z in PR marketing and branding consultancy. Next to her is Oliver Madenge, the managing editor of audiences and engagement at NMG. He also happens to be my boss, so I hope I'll get to keep my job after this because I'll be tough. Next to him is Yvonne Okwara, the business editor and senior news anchor at Citizen TV. And on the extreme right is Mr. Eric Latif, a senior journalist at Spice FM, specifically at The Situation Room, if you're a big fan like myself, and KTN News. So let's welcome them and give them a round of applause. So I'll just start off the bat, just to get your thoughts and sentiments. Don't worry, it's a very easy panel discussion, so hope everyone is easy about it. What was going through your mind when you saw some of the findings launched? What stuck out to you? What was most interesting? What shocked you, perhaps, about the findings from the research that has been launched today morning? Mr. Mbogwa.
Thank you, Gina, for that question. I think for me, the fact that young people consider self-awareness as a major achievement, for me, was the most surprising. That people think if they know who they are, for them that's a major achievement. But also the fact that they are interested in money, I think that was also very interesting. Because they had 3 strands about money: how to make money, how to save, and something also which is related. So for me, that is something that I found curious.
What I found very curious was I thought entertainment would be our key factor, really, because in that demographic, we see that most of them are mainly funk and want to be entertained, and they like their news shaped in a certain way. So I thought entertainment would be the main factor. It's a factor, but it was not the main. That for me stood out.
Thanks, Nima. I think for me, one of the things that probably struck me is a confirmation of the assumptions or the debunking of the assumptions that we've had about this generation. We have assumed a lot of things about them, about how they're consuming what is important to them. For me, it was just another confirmation from many other reports that have come out since COVID, showing us the difference between this generation that we feel that we are observing the most, what they're consuming, how they're consuming it, and the assumption that we had that this is the kind of content that they actually do consume. I think that is the most, for me, is the most striking feature of this research so far.
Yeah, I think it's, like we said, the assumptions that we have about young people. Yes, they do come to legacy media for news, which is something I think we've always been saying, but then I guess the data helps to back that up. For me, there was one slide in the presentation that was interesting, the one about the digital news media sites that are consumed by millennials and Gen Zs. So of course you have the list, Tuko, Citizen Digital, Mpasho, but then there is 28% who said they don't know any of these platforms. Now that's huge because that's 28% of them who said, so the list is Tuko, Citizen, Mpasho, Pulse Live, Gafla, Standard Media, Kenyans, The Star, Nation Africa, all of those. But 28% said they don't know any of these platforms. And that is more than the number 2, which is Citizen Digital, and then, well, close to Tuko. If they don't know these platforms, where are they going to for their news? And I think that's one of the things that I would be most interested to understand, because then it seems, who are we talking to? And who do they listen to, and what do they want to see? I think that for me stood out, and I would want to know if we asked them further, who do they know? What do they read? What do they look for in those that are not listed as the top 10 or so? I think that was really interesting to see.
That's an interesting point. We'll dig a bit more into it later. Eric, what stuck out the most to you?
Just like everybody has said, the fact that infotainment, just direct entertainment is not what they go for. It's not really a shock, but it's a pleasant surprise to see that it's actually been confirmed that they actually want a different kind of news and information. But I was also surprised to see the issue of paid content. And the questions that came to my mind is, what exactly did they understand that to mean? And what did they mean when they say that they pay for some content? So that's something that I'd like to maybe even discuss further on that. It stood out to me, you know, that's just a lot of money, about 3,000 shillings for paid content. I'm not sure what exactly that is.
So actually that leads me to my first question. And what I found interesting was that aspect of the payment. So the report finds that 52% of millennials and Gen Zs earn between 10,000 to 40,000 shillings. And that only 5% earn above 70,000 shillings. But majority of them pay between 1,500 shillings to 3,000 shillings, which is what the report mentioned. And for content, that is. But when many of these legacy media channels put up paywalls, when they put up paid for content, many of these millennials and Gen Zs are often reluctant to pay for this content. It's a discussion we've had for a very long time in Kenya. So then is it a question of the money is there but they're not willing to pay for the content, or is it that they don't feel like they want to spend their money on that specific content? What are each of your sentiments?
My reading of that report, if you look at their consumption of WhatsApp, is that they assume when they pay for bundles and someone sends them a clip of a news item, they have paid for it through that. So when they say we have paid for this content, probably they mean they have bought bundles, because if you look at that table where they are watching all this information, you need bundles to get the news that they are looking for. So that will be my reading of the report.
I think for the paid content, what I found out, it's difficult to pay, for example, if Citizen puts up something and I pay for it, because I know at the end of the day, via WhatsApp, I'll just find that clip somewhere. I'll find it, a snippet of it, I'll find it, and I'll still absorb the content from there, instead of actually paying a certain media house to consume that content. Yeah.
Oliver, I'm very curious to hear your sentiments on this especially.
Yeah, it's a topic that is close to my heart. It's part of my JD, even to make it more interesting. But what I found in the report is that I don't think they're talking about bundles, because there's a list of what kind of content they're paying for. They talk of trending news, sports news, general current affairs, political news content, entertainment, business news content, reality shows, as some of the top content that we are paying for. What we found, even through our own research, one of the things that we are doing this year is that we are bringing back the paywall on Nation.Africa and also put another paywall on Business Day. Is that what we found in our research is that people are willing to pay for that content. And actually, the amount that we are finding that people, when we ask them how much they want to pay, is actually similar to what we are seeing on this particular research. Why they are not paying is simple. They've told us, you can't give me what is being offered elsewhere for free and expect me to pay. And some of them make comparisons with the kind of content that, for instance, they pay for. Why they pay for Netflix, for instance. Why they pay for F1 TV. Why they pay for Showmax. They pay for these particular platforms because they are getting something else that they cannot get elsewhere. And so there's nowhere else you go to watch F1. It's only F1 TV. So, and that's what they're asking for. So it's not about the ability to pay or the willingness to pay. It's about what are we offering them. And for me, the question now to us, who are the content creators and distributors of content, is what kind of content are we going to create for this generation that is saying, I want to spend 3,000 shillings on you, but you have to give me some kind of content that makes me want to pay and come back.
think there's a big difference because one of the things that the study revealed is that they are actually coming to legacy media like TV and radio for news and current affairs. But that's perhaps a little different from what they are willing to actually pay for on the digital platform. So there's a sense in which what we do on legacy media and what we do on digital have to be two different things. There has to be content that is specifically created for those online. As opposed to a lot of what we do with our e-papers and a number of other things, which is taking what's on legacy media and putting it online. Or somehow repurposing that and putting it online. How about creating content that is specific for those online, so that it's different. It might be the same news, but it's different, in terms of the approach and the content. So this is what they said about content that is consumed, that it is interesting, it is attractive. Then of course there was affordability at the end. But then there's also the other thing that I think we keep talking about in legacy media, that it must be deep and it must be elaborate and it must be highly researched, which is important, but not as we think, because for it to be exhaustive and elaborative, only 26% said that that is what they're looking for. That's the type of content that they use. And also just to pick up on what Rapura said in his opening remarks to this in terms of, what they want in terms of, making money and meeting their individualistic goals, but then when you look at what they actually consume, business is at the end of it. But then my challenge to all of us is then to think about how we categorize and classify our news. So we've got main news, current affairs. I mean, even look at our traditional bulletins on television. You've got what we call main news. I don't know why we call it that. Then you've got business and sports. But how about we're just creating news that then fills that need, which is they want to know how to make money, they want to know, how to progress in life, and that's the sort of thing. So when we say this is why they're consuming business news, is business news the only thing that can teach them how to make money? Or can we find a way to make it news as a whole and then tailor it to their needs, instead of these old categories that we are stuck with and the old way of doing things, that then just doesn't quite speak to the needs of what they want to look for in digital. So let's stop thinking about, well, they want to make money, but then they're not consuming business news. So in the current affairs, is there an angle there that then speaks to how they can make money and advance themselves? Because this study also looks similar to a Reuters Institute study that just says that people are individualistic in what they're looking for. And that's fine. But sometimes we have tended to think mass media does not exist anymore. Mass audiences is gone. Each of them, even in Gen Z and millennials, are not homogeneous. So maybe it's just to think digital first and get out of our old traditional way of thinking of how we do news, how we categorize it, how we classify it, and therefore how we approach it.
So what I saw that many of them paying between 1,500 to 3,000 a month on content. What I was bringing out is what piqued my interest is, are we speaking about the same thing? When we are asking them whether they are paying for content, and our understanding of it, is it the same as their understanding of it? Because I think sometimes we in legacy media have gotten used to defining what news is and what information is and what's important. Just like Yvonne is saying, if it's about personal growth, then it's called business news, and maybe not necessarily so. So it's true that they spend money actually purchasing content because they love sport, right? So do they subscribe to some of these channels? Of course they do. They subscribe to Formula One, they subscribe to AFTV, they subscribe to these small teams. They do that. So they will subscribe to that kind of content because they also know that it's something that is engaging. They're also interacting with the content, they're interacting with maybe the content creators, and there's a way of doing it. Now, it's not that what they're doing is that they're buying news. They're basically paying to enter the room and have a conversation with the like-minded people in the room. I think that's how I see it. And just the same thing that Oliver is saying. If we talk about creating a paywall and saying, yes, it can work, But then they say that this is the same information that I'll get elsewhere. This is the same information that I'll watch on TV, or don't even have to watch on TV. I'll just scroll on Twitter, and I have all this information, so why am I paying for it? And those are the challenges that then we have to think of getting out of, and how to look at ourselves and package our content differently. So yes, New York Times has people who want to consume certain kind of content, and so they will pay for that kind of content. Doesn't mean that the entire world has the same thinking and will approach the same way and win it.
All right, thank you.
Maybe I can add something there from my past experience. There's a time when we were developing my network, and the young people we spoke to in the universities were telling us, we want this product to be a standalone product, and we are willing to pay 30 shillings per week for this product to be delivered where we are. But as editors, we sat down and we said, when a student in the university spent 30 shillings a week to buy this product. So we said, their father is likely to buy the nation, so let's put my network inside the nation. The father will buy, and the young man will read. But you see, this person is in campus, is a border, and the father is in the house. So if you put the product for free in the Daily Nation, this person you are targeting is not reading it. So I think when people say that they are willing to pay for content, we as media houses should be willing to take a risk and pilot, and we should have a research and development department. And I used to make the case for this when I was at Nation, that we need to try products that fail so that we can try out these ideas that people are sharing. So maybe they are willing to pay for content, maybe they are paying for a movie and they say, if I pay Netflix or Showmax, I have paid for content. But are we willing to have a channel that can sell even videos or whatever it is that they want to consume?
Gina, may I just jump in a little bit and to just add on to what's being said? Do they want to pay for news, or do they want to pay to belong to a community or a platform? Because the study says that they would be willing to pay for brand closeness and association. Of course, there's unique content, and also unique content that is of personal interest or relevant to them. Should we start changing how we're thinking? We're selling news, but rather we are creating a community in which you feel you belong, where you will get the news that you like, where you will be the top amongst your peers, and say, I know this and I learned this and this is where I did. That's why New York Times is perhaps an interesting model, right? So they've got everything from cooking recipes to word puzzles and to news. So it's about creating a community, and also part of the study said that people want to pay for news that they can participate in. And this is where social media sort of beats us to it. And that's where nano-influencers, for instance, are even preferred by some of the big spenders. So let me give you the example of EABL. After the watershed rules came to light, their advertising was, of course, heavily cut off. So what they did is they went online. And you know what they discovered online is that they've got communities of people who are actively engaged, right? So there's feedback going back and forth, as opposed to an ad that they pay millions for during prime time between 6 and 10 on TV stations, but they're not getting feedback from the audiences. So how do you like the product? How are you feeling about it? That's what I was saying, the idea of mass media. But then they go on to those nano-influencers who, by the way, don't have many followers. It's 50,000, it's 10,000, but they have a community of engagement. How engaging is the content that we're putting out, or are we just blasting it to millions of people and saying, oh, this is great, and then the biggest metric we have is numbers. So how many people watched our news, how many people clicked on this? But rather maybe going deeper into creating a community, creating a brand that people can associate with and want to be a part of and feel like this is something that's great for me. That, I think, is the approach, including the report also saying that, it's the reputation of the media house, the reputation of the individual, the reporter, that is something that they're looking at. So building a brand that people want to be a part of and creating a community of engagement is what we should be thinking, as opposed to, okay, what news are we putting out? What content are we putting out? But rather making them feel like they are part of something that they can also contribute to. Then they will be able to pay that 3,000 and more.
Okay, I think I'm falling trap to what we're actually talking to here, or just talking amongst ourselves without actually listening to the audience. So I'd like to invite any audience member, any Gen Zs, millennials in the house. You don't even have to be a Gen Z or millennial, just your opinion of whether what has been brought up by Mr. Mbogo and Yvonne and all the panelists here. Okay, we have someone already, a volunteer, so maybe she can get a microphone. So do you believe that it's just being regurgitated back to you, and also following up on Yvonne's question of how to go about that differently?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Laura Carl. Thanks for organizing this session. I just want to pick up on what Yvonne has been trying to. Share with us. I started way back in KBC, and by the time I got there, there's a way they used to do their things, and there used to be these salams cards, yeah? And people used to pay. I think they were 10 bob or something. And people used to pay. They would pay, they would come to the gate and pay, and then, according to each presenter, depending on how popular they were with the period, we had stacks and stacks of this salams card, and then they would go, of course, with them to the studio and read, and just using that formula, they would build a society around them, yeah? And it was such a huge thing, especially Kiswahili service, the national service then. Then when all these things started coming up, I don't know what happened. I don't know where we dropped the ball. And then everything that has happened. So that now we are sitting here and asking ourselves, who can pay and what is it they can pay for? So I'm saying we don't even need to reinvent the wheel or anything. If we just go back to how it used to be done then. If then somebody, and I mean, I guess like 10 bob by then was not small money. Yeah? If then they could pay, even now, so were they paying because it's the presenter who is going to read their name? Were they paying because of the music that is played there? Were they paying because of the news that they used to? I mean, it's a pot of so many things, but the end thing I think is paying, yes, they will pay, and they can pay, but I think they keep on asking themselves, just like you want to say, what am I paying for? Can I get it anywhere else? Then could they get this, whatever it is they were looking for in other stations? Unfortunately not, they couldn't. So that's why there was a community. But I also believe now, in the spaces that everyone here at the panel is, if you come up with something that is really well thought of, I think it will be beautiful. Yeah.
I'd like to have maybe from one more person about how that community can be built in terms of the news gathering process and how we publish it to some of the audience members. Yes, sir.
My name is Anthony. What's coming up is when you have WhatsApp as being number one, I'm wondering, are they not sharing content? Because that's a sharing content, it's not like a TikTok where you're just scrolling. Maybe they see something on TikTok, then they share it on WhatsApp. That's why it's coming up number one. It might be something in the news, then they're going to share it. And something from a citizen they saw last night that is relevant to them, and they share it on WhatsApp. That's why maybe WhatsApp is coming up as number one. That's my take.
All right. I think we can just, I see there's one more person.
Thank you. My name is Bonyo. I run one of the newest TV stations in town that broadcasts in vernacular. And the conversation here is very interesting because one of the things I'm grappling with is how to identify my audience and just know who do I target with what. But I think back to this conversation, there's that element of exclusivity. So these people are willing to pay, but they're willing to pay for content that is exclusive, just like it has been said. However, what media houses are grappling with is how do you secure this content that if you won't download it, then it doesn't find its way elsewhere that other people are going to consume it without paying for it. Because I remember before my current gig was an editor at TV, and I remember some time back we did a very solid feature called an expose, Rio Fiasco, on how the Kenyan government bungled the Rio Olympics. And the discussion we had is that we take it on TV, but we don't put it on our YouTube page. Then Royal Media Services have just ventured into Viusasa So it was put on Viusasa. So by morning, we had a lot of requests for the link to that particular feature. When we directed people to Viusasa, by noon, it was circulating for free. Because for Viusasa, you had to pay for, I think, 10 shillings to access it. But by noon, it was already elsewhere. And I think by 1 p.m., we decided now to upload this content now back to the Citizen Digital. So content that is exclusive, it is there. You can get it. But how do you monetize it? If you make it exclusive, I'd say there's a lot of bad manners that I see content and I don't think I want to have it alone. Then I'll put it in a WhatsApp group where I belong, and from there, like wildfires, it will go. So I think it will also be incumbent on the consumers to be very decent, that if I pay for this content, and it's an exclusive content, then let me not distribute it widely. Then I think we can get to know how. Pardon? Okay, give me the mic. Yes, then we can actually have annexes on content that is exclusive, that these people pay for in platforms like Netflix and Showmax and all that, that they can really feel, let me pay for it. But in the current space, people tend to believe that media is there to offer them that content for free. And therefore they'll find it hard to pay something on BD Africa or Nation.Africa, as opposed to when it's put on a completely different platform that they think they deserve to pay for it. So it's mindset and just the hygiene that we need to have as consumers.
Thank you so much. So actually, I think what I might say next will touch your heart a bit, because it's actually about mashinani. And the question about the audience members, I found this very, very interesting, that the highest proportions of youth who pay for content come from Eastern Kenya at 72%. I don't know who else didn't see that coming. I immediately went with other areas in my mind. Then followed by Western Kenya, Nairobi, Rift Valley, and Central Kenya. This is taken into account by editors and other people in leadership positions in media houses. I'll put the two MPs under heat for this one, because I would like to know if that's actually implemented in your minds whenever you're carrying out assignments, whenever you're sending people out, all these other elements.
Maybe you can go first, because when I'm assigning, I always ask myself which story has a high resonance. For me, that is number one. I do not ask myself, is this a story for young people or is this a story for old people? I ask myself, which story affects the highest number of people? If you look, for example, at today's paper, we have that story that we are discussing today about the young people, and then we have the story of teachers, because we have a large number of people who are affected by teachers. So when I am assigning, I don't think region first. I think highest number of people first. I'm surprised by the finding that people in eastern or the eastern side of the country are willing to pay for content. That one I have zero idea why they came up with that, and why it's not Nairobi, where the incomes are higher and where we have more people who are employed. Maybe he can answer that.
Yeah, I look at it in two ways. First, from the research, is that we still have a large portion of people who are still relying on TV and radio for content. And for me, that means that the digital natives, to some extent, or the millennials mostly, are still using those platforms to consume. And so, once I look at it that way, I now think about TV or the legacy media and the digital media. How do I serve those audiences differently? Because on digital, we always say that every story is a homepage. It's not like TV where you have story 1, story 2, and so forth and so forth. Because on digital, there are many ways that someone can land on your story. There are people who will see a link on WhatsApp and come to your site. There are people who will come directly to your site. There are others who will find it on Google by searching. And so every story is a homepage. And so when you are looking at stories on digital, you have to shape them in a way that you are looking at who is it targeted to. On digital, you can't use mass market mentality. Perfect. But would you go back to Nokia 3310? Most likely not.
Maybe if I just respond, I don't think I think it's right 100% to say that audiences pay for loyalty rather than for the content. I spent about 6 months at the Standard before I moved to People Daily, and I used to see in the morning, we used to discuss the stories that people were buying, because I think we should have had someone from the Standard in this panel. The Standard, they sell individual stories. And in one morning, you'll find, let's say, 1,000 people have bought one story, 500 people have bought another story, and they are buying based on the headlines, just as the research was saying, that young people are looking at the headlines before deciding whether they want to read a story. So for me, and from my experience at the Standard, which I think is an outlier in this market in terms of digital success, I think people don't pay for loyalty. They pay for content that speaks to them. And I saw that happening at the Standard.
Just to add on to what they're saying and what Yvonne was also saying, I would pay for content that makes me feel like I belong, for content that speaks to me at a personal level. For example, I'm a chef. I would definitely pay for content that will teach me how to maybe prepare better recipes or do what is not just there. They're like the normal cooking style. I would pay for that content. Other than I just pay for news. Why would I just pay for news? And that is why we go back to paying for maybe the Netflix, because it has something that maybe I'm interested in. There's a series that I'm interested in, and that is what I would want to pay for. And also, the minute you curate something that is personal or something that speaks to me, in my mind, I know that it's a well thought out plan about me. So next time, I will definitely come back to pay. I will not just, today I'll pay, and I will also, if I need something, I'll first of all check if you're offering me that thing next time, and I will always come back to pay. Yeah.
Fantastic. I'd like to move on to the next question in the interest of time. It's about the findings that indicate that most millennials are actually interested in wealth creation, how to save their money, how to take care of that. And the media, they say, is not doing enough to provide this kind of content. So Yvonne, I'd really like to hear from you on this specific topic, as well as Eric. Why do you think this is not the case in your respective media houses?
Well, I think, why it's not the case in my specific media house. I'm not sure I am authorized to speak on behalf of, including some of my seniors who are in the room, like but I think, like I said earlier, it's what do people want? If that's the content they want, then we have to purpose our news stories and tailor-make them towards that. So if they want to learn how to make money and advance in their careers and jobs and maybe own a house, buy a car, what does that mean in the context of current affairs? So for instance, the big discussion now is the finance bill and the taxes that we're going to have. We can have the traditional stories about that, but then how does this affect your goals today? So you planned to move into a particular neighborhood by the end of the year. So if these taxes are implemented, this is what it will mean for you. I think that is the way in which we purpose it. And like I said before, let's get all of these little straitjackets that we have on legacy media out of the window. Let's just give them news that they need in the way in which that they need it. It doesn't have to be business news or sports news. So if it is in the area of sports, what does this mean for your goals? What does this mean for you in that respect? I think that's one of the things that we need to really think about and change how we do that. And then making a lot more content specifically for the digital audiences. And really stop thinking legacy first. Because I know many of us say we think digital first, but do we really? Do we really think digital first? The first thing we do is go to legacy media, and then someone says, publish it online. Yesterday's story. In fact, what is for all journalists in the room, you know this discussion the next morning. Where's the link to last night's story? Where's the link to the story in the paper? As opposed to, you know, what does this mean? Like really thinking digital first and having digital native content. I think that would be something to start thinking about in terms of how we repurpose, or rather even not just repurpose, because repurpose still thinks with legacy in mind, how we just create content for them. So is this what they want? Let's give it to them, rather than this is the way we've always done it as news, and then maybe we can tweak it for the digital audiences.
To get out of the straight jackets, that's what I've picked up from that. Eric?
I agree entirely with Ron. We are moving, but we're sort of held back by very many things, all right? Listening to the print editors, and you can hear they're still stuck on, they're still thinking of that platform, you know? If it's a website, it's got to have all the content going into it, just like their paper has all those pages in one edition. And when we talk about now us guys on broadcast, we are stuck on why. So is it just cutting the clip and then putting it on YouTube, or is it going live on these platforms, or is it creating content and then we post it online? We are still trying to figure out what exactly this is, but this finding is actually, this is what I could relate with, because there's a lot of content online that has people giving advice on financial management, on wealth creation, and some of these people are actually charging. So they charge, you subscribe to get this content, or you subscribe and then you also get a moment where we meet in this room on Saturday and we have these conversations. So it's actually happening. Now the thing is, we also now in legacy media have got to think how to do the same. The same way we have personalities that are for TV, we should create personalities for digital. And being deliberately so, and we are creating personalities for digital. All of us have digital departments, but all the digital departments are depending on the newsroom to come and feed, instead of just having a completely different content creators that are thinking, that are innovating, that are creating content that goes there, that does not have to come to this desk, that has a separate desk that is creating and dealing with it and the audiences.
Very interesting point about creating personalities for digital platforms. Oh, we have a question in the audience? A comment, okay. Could we get our mic? Such a gentleman.
Thank you. My name is Polika, I'm the Complaints Commission. Now, I looked at one of the research findings that was saying that this generation is mainly looking for ways to make money, to save and search. But then when you look for the correlation of the searches, you are saying they are not searching for businesses, ideas. But then remember, digital disruptions have happened in every sector. It's not just the media that is affected. So your idea of what used to make money traditionally has changed. And therefore they will not be out there looking for businesses. Today we know people who have more money than a typical businessman because they have maybe conventional ways, new ways of making money, which are not necessarily have to be tied to businesses. So do not look for the correlation of they want to make money, they want to save money, but they do not want maybe to save money in circles. They want cryptos. And maybe just look at, just have a change-ready mindset where you know the consumption of media in that sense is also changing in any other industry. So if you are looking for them to be looking for business ideas, and maybe you run a business article or whatever, it's no longer that traditional business. There are new ways of making money, and that is where they are looking at. So when you look for, you see them researching or searching on entertainment. Maybe today this generation believes if I'm in the entertainment industry, I'll make more money than a coffee farmer or whatever. That's my idea. Just have a broader way of looking at things, more diverse.
Thank you so much. Another aspect of the research that I found interesting is that, if anything, like we say, think digital first. You know, anytime that something comes into the newsroom, or even in PR, marketing, or any other sector, most people think digital first. But if the research tells us anything, is that legacy media still holds a very valid place in the lives of many people in terms of credibility and trust. TV is still king in many of the respondents' answers. So my question is, we have digital news sites, even internationally, such as Vice News, going through layoffs, going through the same challenges that legacy media is going through. So is it really that we need a digital-first approach, or are we also losing the plot? Do we risk losing the plot and going that direction of digital-first if there's a nagging issue underlyingly? Oliver, maybe you could start.
Yeah, digital-first does not mean abandoning legacy. What we've seen with some of those that are having challenges today is that they were not necessarily legacy-built businesses that move digital or put in place digital-first strategies. Most of them are digital-only content producers, and the challenge is how do you make the money in that space, because that's what we are all talking about. It may surprise you that in 2022, Kenya spent over 12 billion shillings in subscriptions and downloads. 4.5 billion shillings was used on video on demand. Yet we say that people are not spending money. There is actually money. It's what kind of content are you giving these people? And we'll have to go back. We'll keep going back to that issue of content. It's about the content that we are giving these people who want to spend money on digital. Because, as Yvonne mentioned, if we stay, we come to the newsroom in the morning and think about the 9 p.m. bulletin, who tells your audience is waiting for 9 p.m.? When they are spending 4 hours on social media, why are you not targeting them there? And that's the question that we are asking ourselves. It's not about going fully digital and abandoning the traditional platforms. Because even these traditional platforms, they're not being consumed in the traditional sense of it. It's not that you have someone going at 9 p.m. sitting down at home watching the 9 p.m. news. Others, including some of us who are here and working newsrooms, we get home at 10 p.m. and rewind on YouTube. But we say we watch TV news. So we have to think of it that way. We have to broaden our perspectives on how we are looking at these things. In terms of, yes, they are watching TV, but where are they watching it from? Are we giving them that content in the form that they want to consume? In the morning, the first thing that you do when you wake up, what do you do when you wake up? The first thing that you do, you touch, it's your phone. 87% of people who have a smartphone, that is the first thing in the first 5 minutes of waking up. So, as a media house, Yvonne, when I wake up in the morning and look at my phone and I look at the notifications that came at night, can I find anything from Citizen? Can I find anything from Capital? That's why we are losing the plot as the media and thinking that the problem is digital. The problem is not digital, it's us.
I wanted to add to that, but you had mentioned the issue about credibility of legacy media. The study does talk about it, and this should be something that we should be concerned about. Whether you agree or strongly disagree with legacy media and what it does and its ethics and everything is one thing, but there's another bigger group, those who are indifferent. So, according to the study, 41% of those who were surveyed were either indifferent or disagreed with the statement that news in the legacy media is relevant to them. That's a big number. That is what we need to address. Indifference, you'd rather have one way or the other, right? Hot or cold, like, dislike. But there is something that we need to work on. So 41% and 49% were also indifferent or disagreed with the credibility or trustworthiness and balance news from the legacy media. Those are some of the issues we really need to be thinking about, including the fact that it was said that people come to the news because of the news media platform itself, for the journalist who wrote or published the piece. And then now they say, okay, fine, is it in-depth, is it interesting, does it address my needs? So credibility, and maybe now in the word of digital is authenticity as well, is something that is key and that we need to think about. So that no matter what type of content you're producing for, be it legacy, be it digital, if you have a problem with credibility and trustworthiness, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what we're putting on whatever platform. If they do not trust us, they're not going to pay for content online. They're not going to tune in at 9 p.m. They're not going to listen to Spice FM in the morning. They're not going to buy the newspaper. So over and above all of those things, those are some of the things I think that should be something to be addressed, the creditworthiness and the trustworthiness, because they come to us because we can verify, right? There's a lot that happens online and they're not sure. But if they don't trust you to begin with, everything we're talking about here in terms of those strategies mean nothing.
The non adults, right, sorry, my ancestors came for me in that moment. The non adults would really like to hear from you about, and the rest of you as well, about how we can translate this research into reality. Like Yvonne said, we can sit around here talking about this all day, but if we don't translate it after this session, because it's very, very key, how can we translate it into a reality?
First of all, I want to maybe suggest something or say something to what Yvonne was saying. The credibility of the legacy media. Sometimes we would not find it credible because something will trend online, something will trend digitally, it will go, it will spread, they'll come up with a solution, something will happen. That's when the legacy media will pick it up. So we question and ask, did they just pick it up because it was trending? Do they also want to be seen? Or is it something they've looked into? Is it something they even wanted to feature in the first place? So yeah, that's maybe why we maybe are not so sure about the legacy media, because we've seen that happening a lot. Yeah. And to answer your question, what we can do, one, I think we think digital first, they were like all of us were trying to discuss, we think digital first. And also, the news that we bring, like the legacy media, for a very long time, I think since I was born, I'm used to news being headlines, this and this and that. Then it goes for I think the first 10 minutes, and then there's the next section, sports, then business. In fact, a long time ago, we used to have stocks on TV, and we were shown stocks, this has gone up. These days, it's like a small line passing down there. If you're not keen enough, you won't even see it. You won't even see it, So if you're educating us, what exactly are you telling? Because you'll just bring us news. That news might not be, it will be informative, but it will not be educative. You get? So we would like to be informed and educated at the same time. So if it's going to be news and then we are taught on stocks and this is we even taught on taxes, maybe how to file our taxes and how to do this. We don't have to go to KRA to be taught that, or have a seminar to be taught that somewhere else. Legacy media can be for that. It can do something about that. At the end of the day, I'd want to, maybe for example, now I want to start my business and I know KTN or Standard usually does the KRA thing. I would want to watch that there. I would want to know if today I want to start my business, what would I need? Is it an ETR? Is it a what? I would like to know that from the legacy media. That from there, I would be active in it.
sorry, in the interest of time, I'll have to cut down on the responses. But Eric also wanted to point out something about radio from the report, which finds that in order for radio to attract more youth, stations need to work on having more educative and empowering content, something that Delonis also touched on, and content that's big on current affairs, and also adds that there's a need for apps to access radio content for the respondents. What do you think is driving this need amongst the audience members?
I think it's the same thing that is driving everything else. It's how we define content. If we define content as the way we've always defined content, if it bleeds, it leads. If it's a dog that's bitten, run, that's fine. If it's man that's bitten a dog, then. So we keep focusing all our stories on Raila has bitten Ruto, or the other way around. It becomes irrelevant to Lawrence and the other, because they are thinking. That's why they're indifferent. It's the same thing that happens, and actually on radio it's slightly different. Because radio, particularly vernacular radio and community radio, you find a lot of programming that targets the youth. A lot of it, maybe not mid-morning, sometimes targets a lot of, many stations will target women, and then afternoon will be youth-oriented programming. Now, it's what is it that we are putting as content at that point when we are discussing, when we are reaching out to the youth, or at night when we say we are reaching out to the youth. And many of them are not actually even listening because they are busy with other things. It's the platform, it's being relevant and opening up those channels of communication. So you create a community, make sure that we have open feedback loops and let them drive the content. All we are just doing is facilitating and being proper seeds of content and then giving it to them. I think we just need to keep thinking around and more beyond that. Just to throw in a comment here on the digital first, we still think digital first is 8:30 versus 9 p.m., right? So 8:30 headlines. Have you done the highlights? Are they running? Yeah, this is what's coming up in the bulletin. Come later at 9 for the bulletin. So when you say reporters have come back to the newsroom and give me a snippet for the social media, for digital, so that they know we have this story. And then we'll give it to them later and wait for it to be uploaded so that then you can share the link. And if we continue thinking that way, we'll still be doing what Laura was doing earlier in getting to a certain point and moving out so that Graham Waviro can come and say what's coming up in the news, the top of the hour, and then habari huu kwanza ni muhtasari. Habari kamili itakapotimia saa tatu. We have to stop. We have to think. If it's digital, it's not digital first in terms of give me a teaser on digital. It is inform me on digital. And then the other channels are also informing me. Yeah.
Very well put. Just as we wrap up, I'd like to ask a question to all of the panelists, just to summarize. We've all had some surprises with this report in terms of whether it's newspaper that they're saying that they want more content around job opportunities and they feel that's not being there, around radio, around TV, around marketing and Gen Zs. So how do we sort of make it up to our audience? And I don't mean that means sucking up to them or anything, but how do we bridge that gap that we created by chasing these diluted and and repurposed content? How do we now heal the wounds that we created amongst our audience members in terms of that?
First of all, I think we in media need to take feedback and act on it. For the longest time, we have been getting this feedback, but when it comes to implementing it, either we don't have the political will, or we give people with graying hair like myself to implement these ideas. And that's why I still think that the Standard is doing a good job. If you look at their digital team, there's no one above 25. And they are always posting. That's why you are seeing them ranking very high. You look at Latif, he's the first person to do digital radio and TV radio. No one else in the market doing that. We wake up in the morning, we put on our phones to watch him, and he's on radio. So I think we need to listen to audience feedback. And one of the things I say, for example, when we were writing about using data to track audiences, we used to write those stories. The banks came, they read our stories, and then they started using data to track their customers. The airlines did the same. As we are just producing the content, but we are not reading it. The other day I was at Kengen, and Kengen, I think in 2005 or thereabouts, they realized that if they make electricity from steam, they can make electricity cheaper and they can make it reliable. But it had to take someone with foresight to see that if I don't do this, I'll be disrupted. We had 3 seasons of dry weather. We had power. We complained about the price, but we had power. In media, we were overtaken by those aha moments. And I keep telling people, go to BBC headquarters, go to NHK headquarters, and see how they are making money away from the newsroom. And then you come back, and we have had these conversations in newsrooms, but implementing is a problem. Listen to feedback and implement it.
Very key. Lawrence?
I want to actually ask a question. If the legacy media succumbs to pressure, sort of, quote unquote, what will now then be our news? What will now then be, what new will we, not what new thing will we consume? I think, yeah, that's my question.
Can I get an answer for you?
Okay.
I don't have an answer because I didn't see that coming. But in a nutshell, is that journalism will remain journalism, regardless of the platforms, regardless of how technology changes. Journalism will still be journalism, and that's why at times I say, at times audiences don't know what they need, and so we still have to do our job as journalists to give them what we think they need. But at the same time, as Buga said, we need to continue listening. There are 2 things that I'm always telling people, and Gina is a witness in our newsroom, that we have to keep listening to people. We have to know our audiences. When they pick up their phone, we have to know what they are doing, where they are going. When they come to our website, it's not just knowing someone came to this website. We want to know they came here, they moved here next. That way, I'm able to create a customer journey for each and every of our audiences, and I'm able to serve them better. And the other thing is that we have to not shy away from innovation. Keep innovating in whatever way that you can innovate in your newsroom. Whether it's a legacy newsroom or these digital native newsrooms, keep innovating and then experiment. Fail fast. That is the only way to go. Experiment. Like, you know that there are audiences on TikTok. Why are you shying away from getting there and doing whatever needs to be done? And converting them to your loyal audiences who can come back to your website and pay for your content. So experiment with all manner of formats, content formats, and see what you can do. Look for collaborations. If, for instance, you think that as a media house, you're not able to talk to a certain demographic, why not collaborate with a certain influencer? We do revenue shares for other things. Why not? It doesn't hurt as long as we keep it within the tenets of journalism. It's as simple as that.
Yvonne? Just to pick up from what Oliver has said in terms of collaborations and partnerships, and maybe also what my senior Bonyo had raised about how you want to create exclusive content. I think in the media, for what we've done for very many years is we've participated in the Red Ocean strategy, which is where it's competitive, right? Where in this space, everybody wants to be the most competitive, wants to create the most exclusive content and make the most money. And we're competing fiercely. And what is very true is that those audiences are shrinking. Even when you say you are number one in a shrinking economy, in a shrinking space. So the rush to have the most exclusive content might not be where it's at. Perhaps look is some of the behind the scenes or some of the incidents that never really came up in the story. Because we think that story, once it's published, is the end of it. There is much more. So I think it's about changing the market and the way in which that functions. The other conclusion, I think, for me is that let's create, I don't know if it's slide, I think it might, is let's create news that we can use. I think that's basically what it is. If it's news that we can use, whether you want to categorize it as political, current affairs, economy, or business, let's strip ourselves of all of these sort of boxes that we have put ourselves into. That's one of the things. And I think the other thing is that young people are individualistic, and I don't mean this in a negative way. They want ways in which they can advance themselves. That is not a bad thing. So let's find a way to give news, and perhaps that's the same for all of us, because I think sometimes we say millennials and Gen Zs, doesn't everybody want news that can actually push them a step forward in life? Doesn't everybody else want information that they can use in their social circles and look good? Like, hey, you know, I knew this, and you are the sort of star of your community, whether it's church, school, work, in your WhatsApp group, you know, you're the guy who's always posting things that they know. I think those are the things for me that we need to think about, that whether we put it digitally or elsewhere, that is helpful. Lastly, it's that the gatekeepers of the industry have changed. It's not us anymore. It's not the editors. We will sit there and decide we're going to curate what we think audiences want, but the true gatekeepers is the audience. When we keep giving them what they don't want, they go elsewhere, regardless of what platform you use. And then just remember, even as we do Gen Z and millennials, they're not homogeneous. It's not one group. You have to find a way to meet each of them at their points of need. Lastly, create a community. Brand loyalty. We don't think of ourselves as a brand that people want to be with. So if we think of Citizen, who are we? So what sort of community are we speaking to? If we think of the personalities that are there, do people want to associate with them? People will want to buy news if they feel like this speaks to them. So stop thinking of ourselves perhaps as news media organizations, and rather as people who create communities that people want to be a part of.
Right. Eric, how do you heal those wounds that we've created through these misunderstandings?
I think it's just for us to accept that we are messed up. If we internalize it, the audience is doing what the audience wants to do, right? We are the ones who are just stuck here, we talk, we say we're gonna do like what we're saying, oh, we can see what needs to be done, and then we take so long to get it done, because those who are seeing these things that are happening are also not the ones who are making the bigger decisions. So in the C-suite at the board level, those board people seeing what we're talking about. Are they really invested in this? Are they still thinking, you know, that my pride is owning a newspaper, or my pride is having this big media house? Are they thinking that way? And I think one of the things that we can do is, just the same way there was a deliberate push to have women on boards, let's start having millennials on boards and Gen Zs on boards. So then they participate in shaping those old people's minds up there, and then the old people's minds down here at the editorial level, and in fact even knocking out some of these guys from the editorial desk and sitting there making the decisions. He is talking to an audience that is many years younger than him. He views this audience as his child. You know, it's just, I've seen you grow, and I don't think you know what, I'm the one who knows what's good for you, and we are still thinking that way. So I'm here, I'm making a decision on what I think is good for the millennial, but the millennial is telling me this is what I think. If we have accepted to do these things for them in these other places, why not in our media houses? So the problem is not them, the problem is us. And the day that we in the media shall accept that, you know, we actually are not because we keep saying, you know, that when it comes to legacy media, we're the ones who give you the authentic news, we're the ones who fight disinformation. The other day I was arguing, I have absolutely no problem sometimes with this misinformation, disinformation. The society will decipher what is correct and what's not. How do we do it in villages? You know, so and so, if it's Mushada from so and so, don't. If it is so and so who said it, yeah. And then if it has also been said by so and so, you verify. So we naturally will just become that, will be known as that in the society. But if we have the right information, if we are not the ones who are pretending that we know, stop listening to rumors, to me, they will not come to us.
All right, fantastic. Benson, I'm going to kill me if I just take 2 quick comments from the audience. Just 2 quick comments. We can't take questions, but any feedback you might have for the panelists, please feel free just to.
There's one hand raised there.
Yes.
Hi, my name is John Martin. I wanted to ask a question on influences, but Oliver has spoken on that. But I'll just raise a point in the gap in the research is also on influences. Yvonne said on 28% not understanding digital websites. In the report, the last slide, we're speaking about the influencers who impact the society a lot on digital. So the key question is the media still considering influencers as competition, or are we considering them as partners right now? And also, do we need to come at a point whereby we look at news consumption from influencers as compared to news consumptions of Gen Zs and millennials from digitals and the TV? Thank you.
Thank you.
Just hold that and get the next question.
Right, thank you very much. My name is Colin Sorono. I work with Total News, a digital platform that focuses on children and young people. And one thing that I really focus on mostly is around child participation or young people participation. And I think it has been mentioned here by Mr. Latif. And I think that is one thing that we've been missing out in terms of involving these young people in decision making, in even content creation and other things. And if you're going to consider this as an important factor in content, and consider this the findings of this research, then we are likely to survive from what we are likely to suffer from in future. So we need to act upon that and also try to make sure that we involve young people from management level and all these opportunities that have been reserved for the big boys, so that they feel part of it, and also the audiences can also feel like they are part of the content that is being created. Thank you.
All right, would one of you take the question? That was a comment.
Anyone who might want to take any question, comment, feedback?
The question that he had is, are influencers your competition?
I don't think, and that's why I say the partnerships and collaborations are very critical in terms of the directions that we are taking. I can speak for Nation and say that we are actively looking at how can we work with other people who are not necessarily journalists. The same way we work with big organizations like Bill and Melinda Gates, and we create content together. Is it the same way we can work with influencers and create content together? So I think for me, those collaborations and partnerships towards the future are more critical than we think of them now.
All right, we'll have to end it there, unfortunately. I feel like, sorry, I'm so sorry. We can catch up outside. I'll get in my attempts. Thank you so much. I know panel discussions always fly by so fast. I want to thank all of my panelists. Thank you, Mr. Mbogwa. Thank you, Delones. Thank you, Oliver. Thank you, Yvonne. And thank you, Eric, for joining us today. And for the audience members, thank you for being very, very engaging. We're just going to close it there, but all the best. And if you have any other questions, feel free to have a chat with any of us after this. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for coming to our research launch. To close this is Mr. Gitonga Bijiwe. He's our interim associate vice provost at the University. Mr. Gitonga.